and after peak oil we're going to have an X% decline in fossil fuel extraction per year, oil in particular, and the current intelligence on the peak oil year is probably 2011. There seems to be a sort of growing convergence about that. And after that, in Western countries, especially the edge of Western Europe and America, the decline per year is going to be much worse than that because China and India will want more than we have and they can buy it, and also the OPEC countries are going to hoard it because they can realise its value. So the real projection of the amount of fossil fuel energy we're going to have for this country may be very little indeed by the mid-2020s. Structurally, certainly that's true. There's a chap called Richard Heinberg who's projected the graphs of availability in the UK, and they sort of cross in the early 2020s. In other words, there's no structural surplus of oil and probably gas as well. So this transition from where we are now to where we need to be in the 2020s is radical. And I think that Rob Hopkins, who founded the transition movement, who was in Kinsale and then moved to Totnes, and the first transition town was launched in September of 2006, and now there are more than 1,000. This man has brought an incredible idea into the world, and the basis of that idea is bottom up, not top down. So I think he's captured a sort of shift in the zeitgeist, whereas in the 20th century it's all about top down. The ability to be able to rise to this challenge of preparing ourselves for a post-fossil fuel world, which will also address climate change, will depend on individual citizens feeling inspired and motivated to be the change. And that's why I think the transition movement is so powerful. So I heard Rob Hopkins speak in Dartington in March 2006. And whereas I'd been feeling profoundly depressed about climate change, because I just thought, oh, it's so big, I can do nothing, the G8 or the G20 or whoever aren't going to do enough in time, nor corporations, and anyway, human greed will prevail. Rob Hopkins telling me that we're at the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era made me do a kind of personal audit on my farm. I've got a dairy farm in West Wales. We milk 65 cows, we grow carrots, we're involved with centralised food distribution systems. There's a milk tank that comes to the farm, it takes the milk to open mouth. We do carrots in supermarkets, or we have done. And I imagined this whole London scenario. I imagined I got back from the farm from my day job, which is the Soil Association of Bristol, one Saturday morning. I picked up the phone to order some diesel, and the guy says there isn't any. And then an hour later, the grid goes down, so I've got no electricity and no diesel on my farm. And I thought to myself, well, how long would my farm function? And the answer is less than 12 hours, because we milk cows, we've got milking machine motors, we've got chillers, we've got 4 tractors, which are diesel dependent, so you couldn't run the generator because they'd be out of diesel. This is all a sort of imaginary audit, which I think everyone should do, because you don't have to be a farmer to do this. Just imagine a sudden interruption in your fossil fuel energy systems, and extend that to food as well, because you're going to see the food breakdown, because, you know, the Sainsbury's and Tesco's just-in-time distribution hubs all freeze to a halt. And then do a resilience audit. Would it be, don't worry, I've got a plan, or will it be, I'm in really a dangerous situation? And certainly my farm, for all the fact that it's been organic for all those years, would be in the vulnerable category. And rather than depressing me, which, as I said, climate change did, it actually motivated me, because I thought, and I think this is about the psychology of change, most of us act selfishly. So I thought, I don't want my farm to go down. I don't want my business to collapse. I don't want my family to suffer. What can I do? So in a moment I want to sort of give you like a progress report, because this thing happened to me in March 2006. And I went on a journey, really, of transition. And what I've realised is that you can't go on a personal journey. You have to go, I think all of us work in 3 levels. We work as individuals, driven by selfish motives, which I think are healthy, because if they're inspired, then they become bigger than just self-interest. We work in the community, and we also work in the world. And so this impulse, which really came to me through Rob Hopkins, who I think is a man who's really serving and brought this big impulse into the world, has made me go on a personal journey, but also realise that my personal journey is not possible without interrelationship in the community and in the world. So I thought it would be maybe a start of a conversation if I just gave you that progress report about where I am. So on the farm level, it's not a very good report, by the way, so partly because I suppose I'm probably distracted by my day job. We put in a geothermic heat pump so the house is heated from ground source heat pump. We've got plans for a couple of wind turbines. We might put a methane digester on our manure tank, which holds the manure of the dairy cows. We're looking at solar to heat the water, because we now make half our milk, and it will be shortly all of our milk, into a cheese. And that has reduced the weight of the material leaving the farm by 90%, because obviously if you ship milk out in a tanker, it weighs X, and if you ship cheese out, it weighs a tenth of X, because that's what the yield of the cheese is. But I've also looked at the farm footprint, and this is where the dairy cows are eating their stuff from. So they're fed a sort of muesli as well as silage and grass, and will I be able to wrap silage with a big wrapping bales? No, probably not. And my grain is purchased from England, with only about a third of it being grown on the farm. And the straw comes from England, although I've been trying to do more rush hay bedding for the cows. So my transition plan for the farm is about relocalising the sourcing of all the raw materials from the farm as much as possible on the farm. And so that will mean energy from the farm, capturing it in various forms, but current solar energy. It means bedding from the farm. It means feeding the cows from the farm. It means those are the components, I think, of resilience. So we've made a start, but then of course, when the food leaves the farm gate, ideally it goes to, in my case, Lampeter, which is just down the road, and it's sold to all the good citizens of Lampeter who are getting this stuff and are slavering to buy local food. But the truth is they're all going down to Summerfield or the Co-op, who are now merging into one supermarket, and they're buying cheap anonymous food from somebody they'll never meet, the other side of the world, cheap as chips. And so that led to the second action, which is community. So we realised that if we were going to relocalise our food systems, we would have to take the citizens of West Wales on a kind of hearts and minds journey to get them to engage with all this. So we organised a transition meeting in Lampeter, which was the first transition meeting in Wales. 450 people came. It was the largest public meeting that had ever been in that town. And we just started to sow the seeds of interest in this whole agenda, because most of them were ignorant about the imminent collapse of our fossil fuel systems, and they, like me, were feeling a bit disempowered by climate change and not very motivated by it. But there, I would say, even this is only a year ago now, just over a year ago, this is March 07, the meeting, there are real signs that the Lampeter community is starting to engage with this agenda. And obviously it requires a critical mass of people who become loyal and emotionally committed to supporting local producers for the thing to work, because otherwise you have to continue to be dependent on remote distribution systems and sourcing. So that's, I think, what transition is about. It's about going from where we are now, from systems which are completely dependent on the existing food systems, which are hopelessly inefficient in terms of fossil fuels, and very vulnerable because of long-distance transportation, to relocalised resilient systems where everybody has to be involved, because it simply doesn't work unless the majority of the public buy into it. Because they may, in the short term, have to pay more for their food or invest in infrastructure in relocalising the systems. So we did that. We also relaunched the West Wales Soil Association. That's what brought me into the Soil Association back in the 70s. And I think as an organisation we've become rather over-centralised. And the Soil Association needs to become a big food movement for change, as I said, and we need to give our movement back to its members. We're not the Soil Association, its members are. And the manifestation of the Soil Association's work needs to come from the ground up, just like the transition movement has. So we want to put ourselves at the service of the food and farming element of transition, and the troops to deliver the change will be individual citizens, not producers on their own, because they're vulnerable without a corresponding community of people who share this philosophy. So then, finally, that's my sort of report on what we've done in the community. I could say more about that. But then there's what we can do in the world. Well, because of my role in the Soil Association, obviously, this is of special significance to me. And I said at the beginning that we are known for certification of organic food, and in my view it is and will continue to be the case that if you buy organic food, you are making a very, very significant contribution to reducing emissions